This is the magic of electricity. Listen to this.
So hello and welcome to what I would say is a pretty significant moment, certainly in Audi's history and ultimately in the history of cars, because this is Audi's first all-electric SUV. It is the e-tron. I'm absolutely fascinated to see what this thing is all about. I know electric has been on the precipice of going mainstream for quite some time, but for me it's taken a brand like Audi to make a car like this for me to get truly interested, because now the game is getting real and it's getting serious, and today we're going for the first drive. But before we do that, I'm going to give you a quick guided tour around the car to highlight what it's all about, and then we're going to see what 402 electric horsepower really feels like. The SUV market right now is exploding. It's the fastest growing segment in the automotive scene, and therefore it makes sense to step up the future with a platform that's going to appeal to the most people. So here it is, the e-tron SUV. This is the 265 kilowatt variation of this car, which, as I mentioned a minute ago, translates to around about 402 horsepower. But let's just make a point of highlighting the things that do make this thing unique, and that is this functionality right here. Behold, the next generation of fuel filler cap. This is where you're going to plug in your car to charge it. So Audi have created a charging system that can quick charge this battery pack. So if you do find a service station with their three-phase charger, you can charge this car's batteries 80% in just half an hour. Now, I know that sounds like quite a long time when you are used to filling up a full tank of fuel at a petrol station, but right now we are in the early days of battery tech. So DC current on this side, AC current here, that ultimately is the dream charger that will charge your car very quickly, and it's definitely what you want if you're going on a prolonged journey. You can plug that in, nip into the service station, have yourself a coffee, and by the time you come back, this will be 80% charge. The battery cells are entirely in the floor pan of the chassis. Those features make the design possibilities of an electric car entirely different from a more conventional engine-powered car. But Audi wanted to create a platform that was familiar and would still appeal to people who were interested in something like a Q5 or a Q7, which is interestingly where this car sits, right between both of those cars, and we'll talk a little bit more about that once we go for a drive. The paint on this is gorgeous. It's in a color called Galaxy Blue Metallic, and Galaxy it is. It's like staring into a constellation of stars, the amount of metallic fleck this paint has in it. And here we are on the inside of the car. Now, the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is, because there is no need for a conventional transmission tunnel here, they've been able to utilize this space in quite a creative way. So the amount of storage here, look, it goes all the way down there for plenty of storage. But importantly, in the rear, there's actually more legroom too. This is the 5-seater option. Interestingly, and I guess importantly, on the inside, I'll just start the car. That's it. That is now on, look. Ready. We are ready to drive. It is really that quiet. Yeah, on the inside, if you're familiar with recent Audis, this is very similar to the likes of a Q8. We've got the dual screen here. This screen down here is effectively used for your climate control. Screen up here is infotainment, and then screen in front is the massive virtual display that we have become familiar with in modern Audis. And I think that really is this car's trick, is that while it is an entirely new car for Audi, for customers it will still importantly feel very familiar. So let's see how we go. We currently have a 166 mile range, as indicated here. Audi have told me that the car will achieve around 240 mile range from a full charge, but of course it's very dependent on how you drive. Speaking of which, we should probably go and do that. So welcome to the all-new, and I really mean entirely new, Audi e-tron SUV. Four-wheel drive, practical daily driver, 100% electric vehicle from Audi. As a spot of context as to the importance that Audi have placed on electric in their future, the conventional financial outlay for the development of a new internal combustion engine car is around about €1 billion. With the electric vehicle range, you can double that. And that's just from Audi. And think about this, because pretty much every manufacturer in the world right now is doing something with electric vehicles and electric tech. And the money they're throwing at it, well, is double what they would normally throw at the development of a dinosaur juice powered car. So needless to say, the future of Audi will have an extremely strong emphasis on electric cars. So much so that by 2025, Audi will have at least 20 new electric cars. That's massive. So Audi claim that the car has a 241 mile range. That is obviously just like a normal petrol engine. Depends very much on how you drive it. If you're heavy with the right foot, you're gonna run out of juice quicker. It's as simple as that. Now, I've only been driving a short amount of time. I set off in comfort mode. I had 166 miles in the battery tank, as you saw when we first set off. I'm not entirely sure how this is gonna play out, because I haven't driven 13 miles and we've already had a reduction in range of 13 miles. I've probably driven about 6 miles. Not particularly heavy footed. I did demonstrate a short burst of intense energy earlier, which I guess has depleted the reserve somewhat. But I don't know. Time will tell, won't it, to see just how efficient these cars are when you get to rolling. It's this surreal combination of the real world and the Jetsons. I mean, as far as sort of stereotypical electric propulsion sounds go, this is right up there. You can hear that sort of high-pitched whine, and then as you decelerate, it's got this lovely sort of wind down. It's such a niche experience. I think one of my favorite experiences of electric cars is actually when you first set off. It's so weird. I mean, just listen to it. It's pretty, I mean, it's actually silent. If it wasn't for the road noise, once it's built up its momentum and it's rolling, that electric whine isn't really there anymore. And it's kind of shrouded by road noise, which in this actually isn't that bad. But generally, it's this effortless waft along the road. So let's speak about the driving characteristics of this. The unique trait, the inherent trait of electric propulsion is the fact that all of the power and all of the torque is available all of the time. So 100% of the power, or certainly 100% of the torque, is available from zero. And what that results in is an incredibly impressive gathering of momentum. I mean, this is 40 miles an hour. And of course, at this stage, in a conventional internal combustion engine powered car, I would be pulling on those paddles. Yes, there is still paddle shifters on this steering wheel, but they're not for gears. I shall explain that shortly. But back to what I would do in a normal car right now to demonstrate its pull. I would drop it down a few cogs and then mash the throttle. But in this, it is accessible all the time. There is no gear. It's a single drive in effect. So we mash our foot now. Immediate torque. Immediate. It's just one continuous linear pull. It's really interesting. Now, by no means is the e-tron a demonstration of the capabilities of the performance of an electric car, because the performance that you can extrapolate from an electric engine is mind-bending, of which
traction is actually in the favour of an electric car because they weigh quite a lot. The inherent issue with batteries is that they're very dense and you need a lot of them in order to generate the power and the range required to make an electric car an appealing proposition. So this car, for example, weighs the best part of 2.5 tons. Yes, heavy, but it'll also do 0 to 60 in around about 5 seconds. So it doesn't hang around. Now I know when we talk about performance, 5 seconds isn't that great. But don't forget, this is an SUV. This isn't a sports car. This is your daily driver practical car, and practical it most certainly is. It actually is still a four-wheel drive system, so Audi can quite rightly apply the Quattro moniker to it. But it works differently to any other Quattro system ever developed because it has two independent electric motors on both the front and rear axle. The trickery that can be achieved with such a system is all sorts of fancy torque vectoring and allocating power to each individual wheel with such finite precision that wasn't previously achievable with the Quattro systems of old. But going back to the weight, the way that the batteries are placed is as efficient as you can possibly get for the distribution of weight. It's all in the floor, and so as a result the center of gravity on these cars is, well, basically perfect, because the majority of the weight is as low as it can possibly go, which makes for excellent handling. You don't always associate SUVs with having the greatest of handling, but because the weight of this is so low, it's actually surprising how you can throw this thing into a corner and it just hooks up and goes. And of course, there's no lag from an engine. This is the most instant throttle response you can possibly wish for. I mean, it is quite literally drive-by-wire. This is drive-by-circuit board, in fact. You press your foot, immediate. No decipherable lag at all. It's just massively there for you. And then, of course, because you're gathering momentum with such rapid pace, you are hoping that the brakes will be there to stop that 2.5 tons, which you have very swiftly gathered to 60 miles an hour without so much thinking about it. Now, this is where things get exceptionally interesting because the brakes on this car also act as a energy regeneration system in two ways. First of all, when you conventionally use the brake pedal as you would do in a normal car, the friction generated as kinetic energy is converted into electric energy and then restored back into the battery. So in fact, when you're braking, it has now become an efficient function of the vehicle itself. So braking is no longer just about stopping the car, you are in effect actually recharging the battery to a degree as well. They're actually quite snappy. It's quite a bitey brake pedal. And immediately, like I'm talking right at the very top end of the brake pedal, it's almost actuates like a light switch. It's either on or off. If you don't have much dexterity in your braking foot, it's going to take some adapting to, because these brakes, they're so sharp. And I can only put that down to the fact that they're using this to regenerate power from the brakes. It's fine when you're going quickly because you can anchor on and the momentum allows you to just apply more brake pressure. But when you're going steady at sort of town speeds, it's actually quite a sharp pedal feel. It's pretty bitey, which, okay, in a supercar and a sports car, you kind of expect. But in this car, let's not forget what this platform is. It's your practical daily driver, take your kids to school wagon. And if you're not familiar with the biting point of this, your kids are going to get to school with whiplash. It's really, really sharp. Now, it doesn't take long to adapt to, but it is unlike any other brake pedal I think you've probably ever felt. But where it gets interesting is when you're actually coasting, particularly downhill. Now, earlier on, I was referring to the paddle shifters on the wheel, and this is where the application of these becomes apparent, because on what would be conventionally the downshift paddle, that actually applies more friction. That's the only way of really describing the feeling of it. It increases the regenerative braking when you're coasting. So you pull that down paddle, and as you're driving and not accelerating, you can feel the friction of the regen being applied further. I actually do think that they might have the calibration of these the wrong way round, because I'm interpreting it as friction on the brake, or just more regen. and yet in order to achieve more regen, you're pulling on the down paddle, which is a minus symbol, which means less of something. Anyway, aside from that slight personal technicality, if you pull on the downshift, it increases the regen on coasting, and you can actually see it taking place on the battery indicator, which is on the dashboard in front of you. You press that and all of a sudden friction comes into play and regen starts to occur. And the same can be said for the upshift paddle. Once again, I don't know why this is, but if you press the upshift button for plus, it actually reduces the regen. I'm pretty sure they should swap those around, because intuitively it doesn't make sense, but nevertheless, that's what those two flappy paddles are now for, increasing and reducing the regenerative ability of the braking and battery system. So let's talk about the defining feature of the car, which is of course the fact that it's powered by electricity, and how do we recharge these things? Well, interestingly, Audi have said you should adjust your mindset when it comes to driving an electric car and treat it similarly to your mobile phone. Meaning, at any given opportunity, if you have the chance to put your mobile phone on charge, it's often convenient to do so. And Audi are saying you should adopt a similar mindset with your electric car, meaning that when you get to work, you put the car on charge. If you pull over to a service station and you have the opportunity to charge your car, you put it on charge. If you pop over to your friend's house, you put it on charge. And equally, when you get home at night, you put it on charge. The general theme here being, if you get the chance to put it on charge, do it. Now, for me, we're in the very early stages of electric cars, and there are apps available, in fact third-party apps, which Audi have recommended, one called ZapApp, which allows you to plot your journey based on the location of charging points. So if you do have range anxiety and you need to go on a long journey, fear not, you can find routes which will be optimized for you to find a point to charge. However, not every charging station is going to have the ability to charge with DC current or a three-phase charger, meaning, well, it takes 5 hours to charge this thing to full if you don't have a quick charger. And right now, quick chargers simply are not scattered all over the country. Yes, major service stations on major routes do have them, but the infrastructure is very, very early. And so I see this car right now fits into the lifestyle of somebody that, well, simply isn't doing long journeys every day of the week. If your commute to work is even 30 miles, so you have a 60-mile round trip, it's great, because once you get to work, you can plug it in, full tank of fuel. Once you get back home again, plug it in, next morning, full tank of fuel, all good. It's the longer journeys when, not just this car, just electric cars generally, it'll become a bit of an issue, right? Because you're going to have a three-phase charger or a DC current charger in order to not spend half your day literally at a charging station. Now, Audi and other major manufacturers have teamed up, and they are actually making their own. And when that gains traction, they will be rolled out substantially across the UK, and I guess ultimately across the world. But until that happens, this is really for the commuter, which is going on shorter journeys, and for that purpose it's perfect. And honestly, as much as I am a die-hard petrol head, the internal combustion engine for me is important from an emotional point of view. For my daily driver like this, look, I've just bought a Porsche Macan Turbo. I didn't buy the turbo to stir my soul. I bought it because I wanted more performance. This drivetrain, this electric power, it gives me that performance. Massive torque, instant response. It's great, it's fine, and for what I use that for on the other side of my life, when I'm not looking to, grab a car by the scruff of its neck, drive it 10 tenths and have my spine tingled from the sound of a naturally aspirated V12, I don't care. I don't mind. In fact, let's go all the way. Give me an autonomous car right now, because I've got a lot of work that I could otherwise be doing rather than driving a car right now. So, look, I think we're in a position where we should be embracing these things for the applications which they are very good at. I don't think we should be looking at it right now and going, oh, they're boring, because that's not the application yet. The application for a daily driver, something that's efficient, quiet, easy to live with, very enjoyable to drive from a drivetrain point of view. They're just effortless and there's lots of power available immediately. That's what they're great for. However, I believe there is somewhat of a catch to this situation, because the price to entry of an Audi e-tron is £71,000, sir. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of SUVs in that price bracket and much greater. The thing is, we are in the very early days of battery technology in the automotive space. And the rate of development in this space is such that in a very short period of time, this car is going to feel like your old mobile phone. Out of date. Very quickly. So yes, this isn't about a driver engagement. I'm going to put that out there right now. And I do think that range anxiety might still be a thing. But as a daily driver platform, it's hard to criticize, really. As a petrol head, as someone who predominantly features sports cars and supercars and cars which are totally unnecessary but driven entirely by the heart, it is quite hard for me, but important, to remove the performance side of my brain and convey to you what this thing is like to truly live with and just use on a daily basis. And when I've put myself into that bracket, I think they've probably nailed it. No doubt. Undoubtedly, I will be driving a lot more electric cars. That's just the way that the world is going. So I would like to hear from you in the comments below what you think and what you would like to see from future driving reviews of these new cars. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ciao!